So, hello, welcome back to another episode of me hopping around doing cardio while recording and talking about something that is actually this time very, very, very relevant. And this recording, just analyzing it meta, is a bad thing. But you'll understand and know after this episode. So, I was just, and I really recommend you do so as well, been watching the YouTube video, but I'm sure that there's also a podcast by Andrew Huberman, / the Huberman Lab podcast number 39, which was about, and I'm reading the headline, controlling your dopamine for motivation, focus, and satisfaction. So I thought, well, while I'm working out, while I'm doing my cardio, while I'm doing something, I could also, listen to something worthwhile, something that could give me a bit of information so that now I can talk about something good, something great. I do not really know if I'm going to get everything right here. So I do recommend, as I said, to listen to the original one. Once again, Huberman Lab podcast, which is Huberman, then space LAB space podcast number 3939. So it is about dopamine, and being happy essentially, and feeling motivated, and feeling like doing something, feeling like achieving something, feeling like life is good, which is kind of the, I don't want to say main thing, but a pretty big thing that dopamine is doing. And this episode is really, really, really worthwhile watching, or worthwhile going through, worthwhile consuming, because it can really, really help you. And it also made me realize certain things that I have been doing. And, even though I have seen it before and I've recognized before, really knowing what is going on, really know why I'm feeling certain ways sometimes is something completely different, Recognizing and knowing why you do so, two different things. So to give you a bit context, I have seen that, first of all, when I work out, afterwards, I most often feel a bit worse. But I've also seen that this worsening is indeed higher when I've had a cup of coffee, maybe multiple cups of coffee before I worked out or during my workout, I tend to do so because, I feel better, more energized, and, I feel like having more energy, and I am working out harder than without coffee. I've actually been trying it out with tea as well, since it is a bit easier for me at this point in time to prepare, but it definitely is not the same. It definitely didn't work the same way as a cup of coffee. Might be due to the strength of coffee, compared to the strength of tea, but I'm not really sure why this is the case. So I have recognized and realized, and also today, because I've had a cup of coffee during and before the workout, I really feel incredibly good. The problem there is that afterwards I feel not that amazing, because, I guess, and as far as I know right now, it is because I have spiked my dopamine levels. And of course, eventually they're gonna come down. Which means, after my workout, they're gonna come down eventually. The problem there is that, maybe it, I guess, depends on different factors. He didn't really talk about that up to this point, up to 1 hour and 21 minutes. I don't know how long it is gonna stay there. Probably up to this point where I engage in an activity that is also dopamine releasing, things that I enjoy. And this is kind of the overall thing, people do things they enjoy and also expect them to enjoy them as much as they always do. For example, me working out every day and me just expecting to always feel great like today, it's not gonna happen, The additional problem to that is that all those many dopamine spikes, they are going to lead to my baseline of dopamine being really low. There's some sort of an yin-yang thing, if you know what I mean. Like If your peaks are very high very often, your dopamine baseline is going to be very low, which means that if you do not engage in dopamine peaking activities, your dopamine level is going to be really low, which means that you're not going to be that motivated nor going to strive for quite a lot, which is a problem and which is not really good, because we all want to feel good, we all want to feel happy, and we all want to feel like doing something great and worthwhile and whatnot. So this is a thing also, by the way, with substances, especially cocaine, other drugs that do spike dopamine just really, really, really a lot, compared to caffeine, which is kind of indirectly doing it, according to Huberman, or Andrew Huberman, because coffee is more or less like making your receptors, your dopamine receptors, more, open for the dopamine, which means the dopamine that you're experiencing, this release, you just feel it more, you experience it more. A problem that I'm now having is that on one hand, he said that it makes sense not to drink a coffee all the time before you work out, because, you're going to feel more motivated and whatnot, which I think is more or less a psychological effect then, This, even though it is not more dopamine in itself when you're working out, you feel it more. So I guess psychologically you think there is more, and so it is going to downregulate your baseline, even though there isn't more dopamine just because of the caffeine. You're just experiencing it more, and you're recognizing it more, and you're feeling it more. So this is my take on it. I do not really know, because just before he said caffeine is a little bit of an exception, because it doesn't increase dopamine per se, it's just making you feel it more. So in the end, it should not lead to an increased drop of the baseline, since it is not adding any dopamine. But I guess in the end it kind of does, because you're feeling it more. I think this is, as I said, not maybe necessarily something that your body's doing, but more or less some psychological thing. What it means for me now is, for example, when I'm working out, I am trying to not drink a cup of coffee before. Also just having some days where I do not drink. Of course, and this is something he was talking about as well, you might feel like, when I'm drinking coffee, I feel more motivated, I'm working out harder, which is actually the case for me. So I thought, why would I do this? Of course, I might be feeling worse afterwards, might be, not do those things I should be doing, might not feel as motivated. But when working out is very important for me and or for you, why shouldn't I be doing it? But he said, in the long run, it is gonna make you progress. It's gonna be good for you. You're gonna feel actually even better when you drink coffee eventually, and sometimes, and you're gonna feel pretty good anyways by just downregulating the amount of coffee and or the frequency of coffee / caffeine actually that you take when working out and or when doing other pleasurable things, for example, learning, trying to make learning more exciting by having a cup of coffee before. Maybe also not that great, because your baseline of getting dopamine from it might, I do want to say might, because it isn't really clear for me, it would at least make sense for me, it might drop, So what did he say about how can I go about my day? What could I do to actually increase my baseline of dopamine? And he was given an example, a real life example of somebody that was highly addicted to, well, maybe not necessarily highly addicted, but he really liked playing video games a lot. And so this increased effort to get more dopamine and more dopamine from the same activity, which eventually is going to lead to you not getting as much dopamine from it as just in the beginning, and also narrowing those things down that give you dopamine by being quote-unquote addicted, led to him deciding, okay, I'm not gonna be on social media, not gonna play any games for 30 fucking days to replenish my dopamine levels. And it kind of worked, you know? Which leads me to thinking, well, what could I do? I do like working out. I find it pleasurable most of the time. So in the end, what I think it can be boiled down to is, how can I make those things that I enjoy a bit worse? As dumb as it may sound and as strange as it may sound, but okay, this cup of coffee, it helps me, but I'm sometimes doing it. And he said, for example, it shouldn't be controlled. You know, you shouldn't be like, okay, I'm gonna have a cup of coffee 3 times a week before I work out. No, this is too scheduled. You should have it like randomized. You know, he said, for example, flipping a coin before every workout, whether you're gonna have a cup of coffee or not. Which I think is, you know, pretty cool. Of course, you could also throw a dice. You could do something else if you do not have a coin or whatnot. So how to make things less pleasurable. And I was also thinking about bike riding and the fact that I now feel actually way better than in the summer. Now it is actually really cold, you know, which is the reason why I do not ride my bike as often. But I do not engage in this highly stimulating activity of riding my bike anymore, you know, which I think led me to my baseline being higher, you know, my baseline just, being way higher than before. Might also be due to, and I think this might be an oversimplification of the very complex systems in the body, because I assume, I do not really know, but some things might be influencing dopamine release as well. You know, it might not only be due to certain activities, but actually, as he said as well, the things that you did before, experiences you had before, like months and years and whatnot, which are controlling your dopamine baseline, can also just have an impact on that. So I don't know. Of course, if I ride my bike very often and I don't really care about my recovery, this is also going to have a hit on my motivation, I guess, because my body's telling me, well, you do not have a lot of energy, you are hurting me, and so I'm basically going to punish you with having less dopamine. Would at least make sense, you know. Also something that he was explaining, like, why do we even have dopamine? You know, why this is something that we have to deal with, it is something that we experience and whatnot. But it kind of makes sense, like there's a reason why we are on this planet. The reason why we are on this planet is, reproduction, essentially, you know, and everything that comes along with it, you know, being social, just, you know, health-wise, being healthy, having shelter, having food, being able to survive, and so on and so forth. Of course, you need to have some sort of a reason to do that, you know, having a pursuit, like, and this is where dopamine is. It makes you do certain things that you were supposed to be doing. But I think compared to nowadays, there are just way too many stimulating things around. I don't want to demonize social media by saying, okay, you know, it's gonna fuck your dopamine, it's gonna just hurt you a lot, but it can do. As well, something that really was interesting for me as I'm just now thinking about it, he said, was you should not let dopamine be excreted that much, you know, by, for example, not also really expecting it to be the case, you know, not expecting you to really be happy after doing this certain thing, after experiencing this certain thing and whatnot, which I have also realized, you know. Being very happy, being very excited for one day, and then, well, this day wasn't actually that nice, and really crashing down my fucking dopamine levels, and feeling really shitty, feeling really bad. So I do think, which, you know, could be tied into the whole caffeine thing, I guess the mental game definitely does play a big role there. How you experience dopamine, how much you like excrete it as well, how good you feel and whatnot. But I think the overall thing here that he's willing to say is, from time to time, just cut back on things that you enjoy or just make them less enjoyable, which in the long run is going to make you enjoy it even more because you're going to increase your baseline of dopamine. Coming back a bit to the whole caffeine and studying things / caffeine and working out thing, this is layering things, as he pointed out. You're layering different things that give you joy and or increase the amount of dopamine so that you really, really, really fucking spike. The problem is with, I would argue, a lot of very high spikes is that your baseline is going to drop quite a lot, which is also the problem with drugs. They shoot up your fucking dopamine releases, but of course, eventually it is going to come down, It is going to, going to be in the gutter, basically. Something that now I think about is, if we are all here for reproduction, what if we achieve, reproduction, everything is nice, we have shelter, whatnot, what are going to be, so back in the days, like 10,000 years ago, what were our dopamine levels like? Did they drop, because we have gotten what we wanted to? Or is this maybe just too simple now because, of course, there weren't that many activities that maybe could have given you joy, even though that many might actually be wrong, because just because I might not like cutting down wood 10,000 years ago, people that, maybe 10,000 years could actually be kind of right. People that did cut wood, maybe they really fucking enjoyed it and they get a lot of pleasure out of it. Just also because they maybe didn't have kind of the comparison to other way more satisfying things like, playing video games, social media, all those modern things that we are having. Maybe also riding your bike, there weren't any bikes 10k years ago. So I think in the end, even I didn't watch the whole thing, maybe I should have before recording this, but I really, really, really do recommend, in general, checking out the Huberman podcast, or Huberman Lab podcast. Very interesting, very smart guy, and also very important and I think relevant topics that he's discussing. Also like, working out if you're into that, and just in general, basically, life, having a better life, just self-improvement more or less, and just the very scientific part of it as well, which is incredibly interesting for me. I guess the main and underlying, thing that I want to say essentially is, do from time to time make things that you enjoy less pleasurable by just, doing something. I mean, of course, there could be some really extreme ways of you putting a fucking stone into your shoe while you're running, because it's going to hurt you and it's not going to be that nice and not that amazing. But it really does make sense that the next time you do not have a stone in your fucking shoe, you're going to enjoy it even more. But you should be conscious about the fact that very big spikes in dopamine is going to probably lead to a pretty big downfall of it as well. Unless, I guess, you decide to think about it in a different way and just, put this psychological aspect into the game, which I'm not quite sure of. I would actually have to do some research on that. But yeah, listen to the podcast, watch the podcast. There's also a YouTube version there, and I'm gonna see you the next time. So